Hello and welcome into the Second City Hockey Ice Cold podcast of SB Nation. I'm Robert Zagunski, your co-host with Adam Hess, and joining us today is our editor, Satchel Price. Satchel, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, happy to be here.
You
Finally.
finally on our third episode. It's good. It's good. You finally came on. You can follow Satchel at Satchel Price on Twitter. You can follow Adam at Adam_Hess on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter at ZigZags82. But we have a lot to get to. Obviously, there's been a lot of trade deadline talk leading up to the 2016 deadline on February 29th. The Blackhawks are figured to be big players, guys. TSN's Bob McKenzie has reported the Blackhawks are looking for a high-priced rental player. We'll just throw this out right away. What specific move do you guys think that the Hawks should necessarily make?
My vote's Andrew Ladd. I think that is just the best, most sensible move. He fits the best. Plays a two-way game, can penalty kill, power play. He plays everything, familiar with the system. I think that I just think he's not. I don't think he's the best player on the market, but I think he's the Blackhawks' best option.
I think that's interesting that McKenzie says that they want like a high-priced guy just because they don't even have much space anyway. So when you talk about a high-priced guy, that's really only like $3 or $4 million, realistically, unless they're planning on clearing more salary, which isn't going to happen probably. So I mean, I think Ladd is probably the ideal option too. He's just the familiarity with the system is a huge thing, and I think the Jets are probably going to want to deal him just because they are not going to have the money to keep him, and I don't know why they'd want to.
Are we only limited to left wing? I mean, do you guys see any possibility where they could possibly go for a fourth defenseman? Because I mean, there's been recent struggles from Erik Gustafsson. So, I mean, that's something that we can look at. I mean, Ladd would obviously probably be the ideal. There's also Mikhail Bodker. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with. He's a quality 50-point type player that they would look for. But I'm like you, Satchel. I just don't see where they create the space, even with putting Kruger on long-term injured reserve.
I think defenseman's possible, but Bowman basically said it was either going to be a winger or defenseman recently. He was on TSN, I think, on the radio, and he said that they're strung up the middle, so center's not even a consideration right now, and so that makes sense. But when you talk about Gustafsson struggling, I think that's kind of a relative thing too. He got benched for like 4 games, but I don't really think he deserved that. And so, I think he's been progressing really well as a guy who can move the puck and possibly eat some of those minutes in a playoff rotation because, Q's going to have to get creative this postseason like he did last year.
Mm-hmm. I think sorry to cut you off, Satchel. I think the only defensive guy that I think I would want is Keith Yandle. And after that, I don't think anybody else is a difference maker. And I don't even know if I truly want Keith Yandle. I mean, not just because of that slash yesterday, but just his brand of play is just different, and I don't know that it blends well. And so with the slash on Panarin, he's kind of that guy. He's a good defenseman, but outside of him, I don't know who else you got. So I think that just a wing is the best possible option.
I did see a little backlash from fans for suggesting that Yandle could be an option because of his slash on Panarin, as if any Blackhawks defenseman has never made that kind of play at all on a forward. So I mean, that was a little ridiculous to me. But besides the point, are you guys happy with the Hawks continually mortgaging I mean, I say mortgaging with air quotes, their future like this, sort of. I mean, they're all in. Obviously, this is the window they have where they have Taves and Kane and Keith. But, I mean, is it the right move to do, sort of taking everything away from the back end?
I think it just depends on what you mean by mortgaging the future. I was
the wording, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to the guys from Five for Howling about a potential trade for Mikhail Bodker. And basically what I said to them is I don't think the Blackhawks are going to trade their first-round pick again unless the team that wants their first-round pick takes Brian Bickle off their hands too. And in that case, you're losing a first-round pick, but you're saving cap space for next year, and so that it helps you with the future as well because next year is still the window, and so if you free up that $4 million or $3 million if he's in the minors, that is a big advancement as well. I think that this team still has a lot of good prospects. You look at guys like Nick Schmaltz and Ryan Hartman, Ville Poca, Kiro, Hinostroza, all these guys that are in that can come up and be depth players. Their core and their top is set for so long, and they still have players that are just entering their primes or are still on sort of just hitting the back end, and then you have guys like Panarin and Tavo that are going to be contributors for a long time. That the future, when you're trading first round picks, you're not really mortgaging a future. You're mortgaging an unknown future that could come up, but it still doesn't. It's not like
well, it's not just picks, but prospects, but yeah.
Right, yeah, but I don't think that it's necessarily damaging the future horribly.
I think part of it is just being smart about the way you're using those assets, just because when you have generational talents like the Blackhawks do, you kind of have to strike when the iron is hot, and if you're going to have guys like Taves and Kane and then Keith on a contract that's almost unfathomably good, you have to take advantage of that, because there are teams that go 20, 30 years and they never get a guy who's ever as good as Jonathan Taves. And so when you have a guy like that and then he's locked up, and you have a guy like Kane and he's locked up, and you have Keith and he's locked up, I think there's nothing wrong with being aggressive and saying that you're a win now team, and you might make it harder to win in 2020, but you're going in 2016 looking for a cup. And I think the fans appreciate that for the most part. And, that doesn't mean that you trade Tavo for a rental. That doesn't mean that you that doesn't mean that you do things that are going to maybe be irresponsible or something like that. But if they're going to give up a lot of assets, I don't think they're going to give up their first round pick again. I think that they recognize the importance of maintaining a pipeline, but I don't think they shy away from being aggressive and trying to win now. And I think if you don't execute well on that when you have those kinds of talents, then you kind of risk being, like the Penguins have kind of been the last few years, where they have these incredible players up top, but they're struggling to kind of fill out the rest of their roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think kind of going off that, this is the golden age of Blackhawks hockey. It will probably never be this good ever again. And so when you have the opportunity to win, they've won three Stanley Cups in 6 years. That's great and all, but they're not happy with that. They want to win, 5 and 8. They want to be champions these next 2 years. And so if you do have to maybe give up some first round picks and hurt yourself in 2020 and 2022 and stuff like that, like by that point, Taves and Kane won't be where they are now. And so you don't have players that are going to be in their prime and be able to contribute at the level that they can now. So you do have to kind of go for it now. As much as you want to stay a contender, like having those guys around, like Satchel said, keeps you a contender. And having guys like Artem Anisimov signed to relatively good deals for 5 more years after this keeps you a contender for the next several years. So I don't think that it's really mortgaging the future as much as it is getting rid of some younger prospects that might pan out, I guess, is kind of my thing.
As short-sighted as it may seem, that's why I'm sort of not as concerned about the long-term cap concerns or even short-term cap concerns, because Bowman's always able to work his way through it. Like we were discussing even Panarin's bonus overages if he finishes at a certain amount of points. I mean, this team they're not necessarily concerned with what's going to come after. I mean, that's as clear as day, right, guys? Before we move on to the prospect pool of what you guys think the Blackhawks should give up in a trade for Ladd, and we move on to the draft, what did you guys think of that ridiculous Tavo trade talk brought up by all objective measure, meatball fans, for lack of a better term? What did you guys think of that?
I think it's just silly. He's your best prospect. Well, he's not even a prospect anymore because he's an NHL player, but him and Panarin pretty much are the future. I think people don't realize that not every player is Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane and Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby coming into the league and contributing right away at a high level. Like, he needs time. Confidence is clearly an issue with him. We've heard guys like Jay Zawaski say sources are telling him that. It's pretty clear. Sometimes he seems a little tentative to shoot, but he's getting there. His growth is obviously incredible. So trading a player like that would just be silly, unless if you were maybe getting Jonathan Drouin, you can maybe justify it. But otherwise, it's really just silly to even consider it.
Satchel?
He's too good. I don't really get where there's this movement that Tavo's not progressing as a player, and I think part of it is that we signed a guy like Panarin and he just blows up, and I feel like you start to kind of lose perspective a little bit because Tavo's numbers are almost up across the board, and he's playing a significantly more defensive role than he was a year ago in terms of defensive zone starts, in terms of his ability to back check and his willingness to do that stuff. He is going above and beyond what I think you would expect from a lot of players, and I think for the Blackhawks it's right in line with what they expect because they expect so much from players on that end. But the fact that Joel Quenneville continues to praise the way that Tavo develops in spite of all this talk, I think is more telling than anything else because the team clearly, I think, is on board with Tavo still.
And fans won't. You mentioned that fans won't necessarily, or people won't necessarily see that like other like innate stuff like working in the back checking. Like I mean, they're only seeing sometimes like the goals and the goal scoring or him being. They're only going to look at the negatives and then and limit the argument that he's too small or that he's not an NHL player for whatever reason off of one play. I mean, yeah, he's too good. I don't see where that really came from.
And I mean, you look at like last night, he was just like his talents were on center stage.
Two primary assists.
Yeah, you can see like the talent is there. I think, like I said, I think sometimes confidence is a bit of an issue. He's admitted that, where he said that if he has a bad game, he thinks he's a bad player. That he's still young, he's still developing. He has to figure out that that's not how the NHL works. That's not how being a professional works. That you have to maintain confidence through everything. And as he learns that, he's going to become a good player. And he has the potential for when Jonathan Toews' time is up, he has the potential to be the Blackhawks' #1 forward. Like, I don't think people really realize that. And so I think that they just need to, people just need to kind of learn patience, where he's in a role right now where he's not expected to contribute at such a high level as Panarin and Kane. So what he's doing and where he's at now is fine. And he's still going to continue to develop.
All right, well, let's try to put together a trade here for, I guess, our consensus is Andrew Ladd. So if the Blackhawks are to trade for Andrew Ladd by the deadline, what do you give up? Out of that prospect pool, Nick Schmaltz, Tyler Mott, Billy Polka, any of the draft picks, make your proposal, so to speak. Satchel, Adam, have at it.
I think. Sorry, I'm thinking here too. I would think I would be willing to move Ryan Hartman. I think that is who my #1 preference in terms of moving a player is. Mostly because he's a good player. He will be a good player. He is respected around the league for sure. But I think that he's being rated as a top prospect. But I think that at the same time, I don't see him being used as much more than an Andrew Shaw, and so I think that kind of works against him. And I think Shaw is important to this team now, and so keeping him around can be beneficial. And so I think that Hartman is probably the player that they're going to want to move, and that's who I think my preference is. At least I would not move it. I would definitely not move Marco Dano. Like that, if a team got hung up on him or Nick Schmaltz, I would just end discussions and say, no, thanks, we're not interested in your player because we're not giving that up.
Not for a rental.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think Hartman is probably the guy. I think that it's tough because I think you really are only limited to their kind of upper echelon of prospects because otherwise you're kind of just throwing kind of fodder at people. And if you're talking about getting a top line guy, you're not gonna get him with a guy like McNeil and then like a low level draft pick. You're gonna have to give some serious assets up. And so I think Hartman keeps on showing up on prospect lists. It seems like he's more respected by people around the league, like prospect evaluators around the league, than he is by people in the Blackhawks community. Just because we keep seeing him and he just seems to struggle to break through every time he comes up. But there's clearly talent there, and I think other teams will probably have some interest in him. The question is, I don't think he's a guy that teams are going to be knocking down the door for. And so if you're talking about a really, talented player who's available, it's going to be tough because the Blackhawks probably aren't, they don't have their second round pick this year. They don't want to give up their first round pick this year, probably not next year because of the draft in Chicago. And so they're kind of hamstrung in terms of the high level assets that they really can offer. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Bowman is kind of going under the wire at the deadline this year, just trying to figure out how he's going to try and get one of these guys without giving up those really big names.
I'm interested as to why you guys have sort of shifted to Ryan Hartman. Because Andrew Shaw was the proposed. I mean, this is the guy that we wanted to trade. He's probably going to be gone in the summer anyway. Is it basically just let him sit along for the ride now because we know how important he is because of how talented he is for that bottom six?
I don't know. I don't know that he is a foregone conclusion to no longer be a Blackhawk after this offseason, because when you look at Andrew Shaw, he's probably going to get a raise this offseason, but he's not going to jump from $2 million to $4 million. He's not a $4 million player. He's at max, he's a $3 million player. So, and I think with what he does and what he contributes, he's a former 20 goal scorer, 40-point guy. I think that's worth $3 million in what he brings, and how we hear that he's important to the locker room from guys that are more plugged in, the reporters. Like, I think that's worth $3 million. So if you have to pay Andrew Shaw $3 million over 4 years, that's worth it. And I think that he's an important player to this team. So I think, it wouldn't kill them to lose him, but I think their preference is to keep him. And so I think I've just kind of mentally shifted away from trying to make an Andrew Shaw trade work.
Satchel?
I think he's probably out there of any of the veteran guys that are on the team right now. I think that most of them are pretty much untouchable, and he's not. But I feel like I've kind of they're not going to move him. I think it's far more likely that they would hold on to him and then trade him once he's a restricted free agent over the summer and just get back whatever they can, because someone will give up something for Shaw.
Brandon Saad?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to get that kind of return, but they'll get something, and they might view it as long term. Maybe they give up some assets now in order to get a guy like Ladd, and then down the line they'll trade Shaw to recoup some of that value, and that's just kind of how they balance it out long term. But I think for them, if you take away Shaw and then add another player, I'm not sure that the assets they would give up additionally in that deal would necessarily justify the overall upgrade to the roster, because you would obviously gain a lot on the top line if you get a guy like Ladd, but losing Shaw in terms of at the bottom six, not being able to send him back down there, they clearly miss him on that bottom six right now, and they miss Kruger, and that's apparent most nights, especially when you see their possession numbers. And so I think ideally they want to go and locked and loaded the way they did last year when they had Teravainen, Sharp, and Vermette on their third line. I think they recognize that having that kind of depth is necessary to get through 4 rounds in the playoffs.
All right, quick yes or no. Do the Blackhawks get Ladd? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't mind a fourth defenseman, but I'll say yes. So I'll say they get Ladd in any sense. I feel like that's their top target.
I think yes.
The favorite.
The favorite by any means. All right, let's move on to the draft. The NHL draft coming to Chicago in late June 2017 at the United Center, as announced by the NHL and the Blackhawks 2 weeks ago, rather. The first time Chicago will ever have hosted the draft in the draft's 59-year history. Guys, obviously the Hawks are the marquee franchise, at least in hockey operations, for the league, the most marketable team, appearing in all these outdoor games, players selling jerseys, all that good stuff. How do you guys think this reflects on the Hawks' place in the league? So does it build off of that?
I think a little bit. I mean, Chicago is a fun city regardless to have a good event, and you can see that. I mean, the NFL is, the sports empire of the world, and they've kind of moved their draft home to Chicago now too. It's a good place. The Blackhawks are one of the most successful franchises, and they're having the best decade of any NHL team. So I think you look at that, and it sort of cements their role maybe as that a little bit, but I don't know that plays too much into it. Obviously the NHL has been rotating the draft and the All-Star game a lot, so I think that just Chicago makes sense as a team that has never hosted the draft, and they've been in cities with a lot of bad teams recently. It's been in Florida and Buffalo and Philadelphia, stuff like that. So Columbus, moving it to a city of a successful team is, it makes it a little, and also like a bigger market, like, those Florida teams, Buffalo, Columbus, those are smaller market areas. So bringing it to a bigger market gives the NHL and the Blackhawks a little bit more potential to make some money off the event as well.
I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, I think the draft is a cool event, and I think it's cool to have it in Chicago. Um, there are only so many like marquee events that you can kind of get in the hockey world, and so other than making the Stanley Cup final, being able to have the draft in Chicago is like something that can get fans excited over the summer too, which is like it's not easy to get hockey fans in most of the United States, pretty excited about the sport in the middle of summer, just because there's just so much else going on. But Chicago's an amazing city, especially at that time of the year too. So I think it's a great way to. I mean, how can you complain? How can you complain about Chicago?
Right. I think one thing it'll be really good for is maybe just kind of helping some more casual Hawks fans become more familiar with the system. There'll be a lot of focus on who they draft with that first round pick that year, and who they draft. In a lot of ways, who they draft with every pick, just the names that they get. So people will be more focused on it. They can get more invested into the team because people, like you said, it's hard to get people invested. A lot of people kind of just get more into it as the playoffs come around, and so that maybe help people get more invested in the team and the pipeline and who's going to come up and help just build the fan base up for this team as well, and also the NHL.
What are you guys looking forward specifically to about it, Satchel? You touched on it. Is it the brotherhood and the friendship everywhere being like thrown around?
I just think it's cool having like the whole hockey world kind of descend on one area at the same time, where you have like all these, there's players, there's media, there's executives, and and it's just a good way to be able to just kind of immerse yourself in that community and in that experience more. And I think as a fan and as a writer, games are very fun to cover, but other events like that can be really cool, and it can be really just a cool thing to experience. And so I think for a lot of fans, United Center is a big arena, so there's going to be no shortage of seats and stuff like that. So I think it's a cool thing to have.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like having been in Nashville for the All-Star game and seeing the way that event went and how that brought so many people together, like I stood in an elevator right next to Elliot Friedman and like fanboyed the hell out and was like, oh my God, that's Elliot Friedman. So like that kind of stuff is cool, like just thinking about it as like Satchel said, as a fan, it's cool to think about that so many people will be here, but as a writer, it's a cool opportunity for us as well. So I think that it'll give us something to talk about a little bit more in the summer, which can be difficult at times, and so it'll be a fun thing overall. It's kind of weird talking about it and like trying to not like get too excited because it's still a year away, a year plus. So, but it's still cool to talk about, and it's an exciting thing for the Hawks and the NHL and just Chicago in general.
They're also usually big trades.
Yeah, definitely.
So they usually announce a few big trades at the draft. So that's always
going
fun.
all in last year as an example.
Like look at last year. Like bring it just on that topic. Look at last year. You had Dougie Hamilton, Milan Lucic, Martin Jones. Those are just names that come off the top of my mind. Like those are big names. Those are big trades. So it'll be cool.
So what you guys are basically saying is Stamkos will be a Hawk come next summer.
Oh gosh.
Right? Stamkos will be a Hawk. Big trade.
Big trade, the biggest trade.
To
acquire free agent Steven Stamkos.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing trade.
Is there room to be a cynic here? Of any stance you like? I mean, from any take is like of maybe that this isn't the greatest thing ever. I'm not personally going to take that stance, but one of you can play devil's advocate if you like.
I don't know. I think it's kind of silly if you're gonna nitpick about it. Like I don't see the value in that. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, like the stance is like maybe that that it's unnecessary or that it paints like a bad picture of sort of glossing over all of everything that happened in August and October with Kane. This sort of like just that doesn't matter as much because you're having this kind of event, and it's is that possible? Is that irrelevant? Well, it is irrelevant. Then is that something that should be discussed?
I think the league has made itself pretty clear in terms of how it's going to handle what happened with Kane, and you can obviously have your own feelings on that, and I think we all do, but this is not out of line essentially with the way that the NHL has handled itself pretty much forever, and so I think that that they recognize the business opportunities that are in Chicago, and this is what the NHL has always done.
Yeah.
Like, how mad can you get about the NHL doing like what the NHL's always done? Like I get upset, but at the end of the day, like
I'm just opening it
they're not
up.
gonna. They made it clear they're not going to punish the Blackhawks over that.
Yeah,
so,
and I agree with that. Like I think that's a good point. But also when you just think about the idea that they wouldn't bring a draft to Chicago because of that, like it's to punish a franchise in that way because of the actions of like one player that it didn't even go to charges. Like yeah, it's still a bad look and everything. But if you think about it, like not to make it less than it was, but essentially nothing came of it. And if that's fortunate or unfortunate, whichever way you look at it, that to expect the NHL to shut out their most, not their most profitable, but their most successful and one of the most popular franchises is just kind of silly to expect that sort of reaction from the league, especially like Satchel said, when this is the way the league has operated for so long.
All right. Well, the draft coming to Chicago in June 2017, so we'll have to look forward to that. Maybe Adam will fanboy when he sees us if we're possibly there, not just Elliot Friedman. Let's look around the Central and the league in any sense. Hawks had their recent February slump, losing games to Dallas and Anaheim last week, and San Jose on a disallowed goal. Currently moving in and out of first place with the Stars and the Blues. Well, not the Blues. They have a dwindling lead on the Blues as compared to when they came out of their long win streak. Is there any concerns over this? I can't really. I mean, this is what the Blackhawks do in February. They don't really care as much in a lot of games, or maybe save their energy. It doesn't matter as much to me.
I don't think. I think you can, for in whatever ways you want to be concerned, you can look at it as, okay, they're playing bad, that's a bad sign, stuff like that. But it's also February, and I was looking at this the other day. Last year, the Blackhawks in the middle of February also had a 3-game road trip or a 3-game losing streak in which they got shut out by 3 teams they probably should have beat at home. Like it was like the same thing. And one of those teams last year was Columbus, like that beat them. And so it's February, it's nothing to worry about. Robert, you and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago where I don't think the Blackhawks need to be a team that finishes first place in the Central or really even needs home ice advantage to be a Cup contender. Those things are pluses and are nice to have, but it's not a priority with this team. If they make it to the playoffs, they're a contender and they're going to make the playoffs regardless. So I don't think it's worth getting worked up over.
Yeah, if they're in the playoffs, I don't think it's too big of a deal. I mean, obviously the road gets harder the lower the seed you are and the more you have to play on the road. But this team has been through it before, and they're built for this kind of thing. So especially if they can get some reinforcements, I think the fact that they are inconsistent in February is almost a non-issue for how they're going to play in early June, or
right.
May.
And you look at the last 2 years, they finished third place in the Central Division, both of the last 2 years, and they ended up. If you really think about it, they are one lucky puck deflection off Nick Leddy away from being three-time Stanley Cup champions, like three years. So you talk about that.
Well, they'd still have to win the Stanley Cup final. So.
Right, but they probably would have won that one. Like they weren't going to lose to the Rangers.
Anything is possible.
Right, but regardless, my point is that they've been they've gone deep into the playoffs 2 years in a row now by being the third seed. So I don't think even if they end up as the third seed this year, playing the Blues if they end up playing the Blues or the Stars, whatever, I don't think there's much room to be worried about. Yes, it makes it's a less convenient, makes it a little tougher road, but I don't think it's going to be the straw that breaks their back.
You still see glimpses of them, like even knowing when it's time to, I guess, quote unquote, turn it on. I mean, they're going through a slump now, and they went through that slump you mentioned last year, losing 3 games to bad teams, and then they rattled off impressive wins against like teams like the Kings. I mean, they know when it's go time. I guess, as I'm just summing up what you guys said, there shouldn't really be. I guess there shouldn't be. There shouldn't be concern. I'm moving away from that. I probably annoy you guys with saying that they need some kind of home ice. I still think that at least in one round it would be ideal. But yeah, they're built for this. They're built for this.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. They're a playoff team. They don't need to be. It's that old the Kings fan thing. Regular season doesn't matter. They're a playoff.
Well, the Kings missed the playoffs last year when they tried that. That's always been my concern. I always sort of like work my way back to that, but they're not going to miss the playoffs at this point.
This team isn't missing the playoffs, so if they make the playoffs, they're in the hunt. So that's what they need to do, and that's what they'll do, and then they'll be in the hunt.
That's all you can ask for.
Right, exactly. If they fall short, it's not because of the losses in February. It's because of losses in April. So it's not worth getting, or April or May or June or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's not worth getting worked up about now. It can be frustrating. It's definitely sometimes frustrating to watch them play terribly against, San Jose, which San Jose is a respectable team, but the Blackhawks should be better than them. Sucks to see them, pretty much get, when they get shut out at home and they lose to Anaheim in overtime, stuff like that. That all sucks. But at the same time, it's really not worth, getting too worked up about.
Well, those losses are also not as, San Jose and Anaheim are like 2 of the best teams in the league over the past 6 weeks or something. So, you can look at their records and say like, oh, that's 2 losses to teams that have, average to above average records. But really, those are actually 2 of the hottest teams in the league right now. So it's not, there's not really any shame, in my opinion, in losing a game to a team like the Sharks.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at the week ahead, guys. Blackhawks don't really have that many games leading up into March. They only have 3 games in the next 10 days or so. And they have a big game. I mean, I guess it's still a big game even with the Wild struggling. Stadium Series on Sunday. The Wild fired their head coach, Mike Yeo. What are we looking forward to, I guess, this whole big show put on by the NHL on Sunday? And they also have a big game against the Capitals, which, for most perspective, is the best. They have been the best team in the league year-round next Sunday as well. So those are 2 highlights. Let's start with the Stadium Series. No, it's a great week. I'm actually for regular season games. I'm actually really looking forward to both. But what are you guys looking forward to?
I was for spectacle. I love the kind of spectacle, the whole, the grand nature. I know that it probably turns off a lot of people just because it's like, all right, get to the hockey, all right. But I kind of like when they kind of blow it out and make it seem like it's a really big deal, So like they'll have these big starting lineups and all that. And then obviously, I think anytime you get a game on national TV, and on NBC that people are actually going to watch. That's good for the Blackhawks and that's good for hockey. And so, I think it's always fun when the Blackhawks play outdoors, and I'm looking forward to it happening every year for the next 2 decades.
Seriously.
Low-key shots fired at the NHL though by Satchel.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think
no, but like the people are actually going to watch. No, I get you.
But
Adam, sorry.
I think, like Satchel said, I think that these events are fun. I was lucky enough to be at the Stadium Series when they played the Penguins. That was fun. That was a good game. These events are fun. It's fun to be a part of them. I know people are kind of sick of the Blackhawks being a part of them, but if you don't want the Blackhawks to be there, try having your team be good at hockey. And then
also, Leafs fans that are complaining about it. So.
Right.
That's a shot fired, if anything.
But Yeah, I think that it's fun to be a part of them, and it should be it's either going to be a fun game to watch or it's going to be a really bad game. A lot of outdoor games end up being very bad games in terms of the quality of hockey because the ice is bad. Maybe in Minnesota it'll be a different story, but I hope it's a good game. I hope it's fun, um, and then I just it's I think the most important thing is it's 2 more points, so you just got to hope that the Blackhawks can win that game.
A lot of these are big games too. I think, well, not big games. I mean, as big as regular season games can go, I think that the Blackhawks should start piling up some points before they go through their March slump. So it would be nice. What do you guys think of the game against the Caps? Last time they played the Caps, I don't have it in front of me. I'm looking for it. Last time they played, oh, actually I have it. They lost 4-1. They got their asses kicked, to be frank. What are we looking for this time back at the UC against the team that might be the final roadblock in June?
I think the key is if they can shut down Ovechkin's line. I think that's getting more playoff focused because obviously it's hard to shut down a player in a one-off game. But trying to see how they can limit Ovechkin, especially without Marcus Kruger in the lineup, is going to be hard. That line, I think they'll probably play Taves against that line, but getting to watch Alex Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom and those guys, the Caps are a great team. They have a lot of fun players. Hopefully they can solve Braden Holtby and maybe Corey Crawford can kind of make a name for himself by having a big game in that one. But overall, it's hard. I don't want to sound like weird. It's just sometimes it's hard for me to get too worked up over regular season games, even when they're playing really good teams. Like it's fun to watch, but you hope that they can win, but at the same time, I don't want to put too much stock in it. It's 2 points is 2 points.
I didn't say that.
Well, no. I know what you mean.
For a regular season game, it's big.
Mm-hmm.
Satchel?
I think the Capitals are probably, the Blackhawks and the Capitals are probably the two best teams in the league. And so, you try and, I think you try and match up as best you can. I think that, Q obviously is going to try and play some matchup games whenever he gets those chances against teams like that, especially. And that's obviously harder without Kruger because Kruger's line was kind of always the default defensive stopping line. And, we haven't really seen that kind of consistency from Rasmussen or Deneau yet. But, I think with Washington, that's just a tough matchup. I feel like with most of the teams in the NHL, you can kind of look at the Blackhawks and kind of spell oh, this is where the Blackhawks are going to beat them. This is where the Blackhawks are going to find their advantage. But it's not so easy to find with the Capitals. The Capitals, from top to bottom, are a really, really, really good team. And so, that might be the Stanley Cup final. And if the Blackhawks get there, and that would be a really tough matchup, and I think that would be a lot of fun to watch. But the Capitals are rolling this year, and the Capitals have a really good thing going. And so, that's just going to be a tough matchup.
I think the only thing that people try to knock the Caps with, because I absolutely agree, they're the one team that you look at when the Blackhawks want to play them, that there's not really a weakness, is their playoff history. They haven't been that team that's been able to capitalize on their opportunities come springtime. But I don't know. They do seem different this year. So it would be a fun matchup if they finally broke that kind of streak to play them in the final. If the Blackhawks got there too. All right, guys, let's finish it up here because apparently I am the food animal. Let's finish. Satchel wanting to attack my habits. I don't. All right.
I was attacking your non-habits.
My non-habits. Okay, so I don't split my Oreos. I don't split my Oreos or dip them in milk.
Okay. That's okay.
No, but everyone seems to do that though.
You don't dip your Oreos in milk.
But will you drink
milk?
No,
I eat them
them?
straight up, man.
But okay, yeah, that's a good question. Do you drink milk with Oreos?
Or is it like water?
I don't need.
What do you drink with Oreos?
You don't need milk. Oh
I don't need milk.
Oh my gosh.
I can buy a pack and just eat them.
That's
the slogan, but they're still delicious without it. I mean, the cookies and cream flavor. Come on.
You have to dip it. Even if you split them, you have to.
Oh, okay.
Have to dip.
Splitting them though defeats the purpose of having that full cookies flavor on the cream. I feel like that's I feel like that takes away from what Nabisco's trying, the fantastic company of Nabisco's trying to accomplish.
I'm not
I
a
feel like
big
that takes away from
splitter.
it.
It's not, you don't have to split, in my opinion. If you're a splitter, that's fine. I kind of go in between. But you have to dip them in milk, or you have to at least have milk while you're eating Oreos. There's no excuse to not have milk.
What about water, man? You're eating a lot of sugar and
that's
and
gross. That's like eating cereal with water. It might be worse.
If you drink low-fat milk, that's like basically water, anyways. So you could just find like a nice compromise there.
Yeah,
all right.
There you go.
All right, I'm apparently a savage. Okay, no, I don't freeze my Reese's. This is something people do as well. Who freezes their chocolate? Like, Satchel, come on, explain. Who freezes
I thought this was like a well-known thing because Marco Rubio cracked his tooth on a Twix, and I said you should freeze Reese's instead because you could freeze a Reese's and there's no doubt like you could eat 1,000,000 frozen Reese's and that's like a great day. That's just like a stellar day if you just did that.
Does it just turn into a puck of chocolate? Like, what is it? Is it still actually edible? I mean,
yeah, just imagine a Reese's, but it's just like harder. Like
so it's ice cream. So it's
not like ice cream, but it's just like
If you want frozen chocolate, just buy like Snickers ice cream bars or Snickers or like Twix ice cream bars. That's like I don't see the value.
You have to buy Reese's and put them in the freezer. Everybody's got to do this.
Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, and when I buy my candy, I eat it as I unwrap it, not just put it in the freezer. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned.
I've never even heard of that. Maybe I'll try it and we'll see how it goes.
Don't you like stock up candy? See, if you're like a candy pro, you gotta you buy like candy in bulk, You buy like I buy like a $15 box of candy, and then I just it's like a nice it's like a nice long-term investment in getting diabetes. It's like
slow and steady.
It's so delicious.
And cold pizza, guys. Cold pizza is delicious. Cold pizza is absolutely freaking delicious. I don't care what you say. I don't care if the cheese is congealed. I don't care if it's not the same product as when you bought it when it was hot and steaming. It's freaking. I mean, in some cases, if it's like Papa John's, it's better. I mean, you obviously don't want to eat like Giordano's or Lou Malnati's cold, but it is an acceptable, delicious food. You guys are wrong.
I would rather eat Papa John's pizza for a whole week than have to eat cold pizza for a morning.
Cold Giordano's pizza. You wouldn't eat cold Giordano's pizza instead of Papa John's pizza?
No, cold pizza is nasty. Put it in a microwave. I know microwaving things generally makes it even worse. Just stick it in a microwave. Pizza was meant to be enjoyed hot. Eat it hot.
This is a question that deserves a more nuanced answer because I feel like you gotta go like pizza place by pizza place on this. Some pizza places, overnight cold pizza is almost as good as if you get it fresh. Other places, if you save the pizza for like 5 hours, after 5 hours, it's just like a greasy, disgusting mess. And so, I feel like everybody's right here. I feel like you could eat some good cold pizza. You could eat some terrible cold pizza. Ideally, you'd reheat it in an oven, not a microwave, like a
yes. I would accept that.
Like a lemming, like a knucklehead.
I'm watching the Red Wings Penguins game right now, and Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk just did something that should be impossible and illegal. Oh, and Justin Abdelkader got in on it too. Holy shit! If you need to watch the Zetterberg goal at 8:47 of the third period. Just make sure you watch that because it's a thing of beauty. So that's my take on cold pizza.
Don't we still hate the Red Wings?
I don't know, but that
do we hate the Red Wings anymore?
Woo, rivalry.
I really like Dylan Larkin. I'm a Michigan college hockey fan, so Dylan Larkin was like a joy to watch last year as a Wolverine, and so I like him a lot. And I just don't want him to win the Calder Trophy because I think it should be Panarin. Actually, I'm gonna throw my hat in the Gostisbehere ring. I think Shane Gostisbehere should win it. But
no, you don't.
I do.
Clearly Panarin. He has like 19 or like 18 more points than the second most for any rookie.
The only way
he's like 57, and Eichel has like 39, and there's everybody else.
But Gostisbehere has like 80 points. He has .81 points per game as a defenseman. It's crazy.
The only way Panarin doesn't win the Calder is if like McDavid gets like 30, 40 points in like the last stretch of the season.
I don't
because
even
he's
think McDavid shouldn't even be in the running. You miss half
But
the
he's gonna
season,
be
you're out
because
of it.
he's gonna be because Canada wants him to be. Adam, he's gonna be
Yeah, I
because
think I
Canada
think
wants.
McDavid's still in it if he puts up like ridiculous numbers the rest of the way.
Uh,
Listen,
but
if you're like amazing, if you're like insanely good for like 55 games or whatever,
That's fair, I
that
guess.
could be as valuable as a guy being like being like above average for 80
Mhm.
or whatever.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
guess because right now McDavid's at like 1 point something points per game. So if he finishes with like 60,
1.2.
if he finishes with like 60 points in 50 games, you could probably give it to him, even if Panarin has like 70. Okay. I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah, so that might happen. We'll see.
back to things that give us joy other than hockey. Cold pizza is delicious, and actual zombie dust. Finally, at your recommendation, Adam and I tried it over the past few days.
Hey,
and-
I did not try it. I had it before.
You've had
Did
it
not-
before. I was the only like Neanderthal that didn't have any of it before Saturday.
No, do you remember the first podcast I said? I was the one that talked about how like it's the best beer. Like you have to drink it. You can't not drink.
Did I take it at your recommendation or Seth?
It's probably just both of ours, but it's the best. I mean, before I found it yesterday. Like I got lucky and found it yesterday, but that was before this. I'd only ever had it on three other occasions in my. I don't. I'm only 21, so I probably shouldn't admit how long I've been drinking beer. But but yeah.
All right.
So I've only ever had it 3 other times, but it's just the best. So don't make me sound like a newbie, okay? I am experienced in the zombie dust realm.
Okay, well, you're throwing me under the bus, man. So.
I mean,
Satchel.
the world recommended it to you, realistically.
That's true.
Like just science. Just when it enters your mouth, just
Fate.
Science dictates that it's the most delicious beer. It's objective. It's not even subjective. It's the most delicious drink in the world.
It really is. I mean, I
don't know about that, maybe. But.
I didn't. No, I mean, there's probably something better, but available to what we have here, it is. We were looking around for it for like a couple hours, and we were getting like really, really, really frustrated. And we walked into a liquor store, and we asked the guy if they had any left, and just like the biggest, or rather, like he just became so depressed all of a sudden, like a sad face. He hesitated for like 10 seconds. Yeah, we have some, and he walked in the back. Like he was probably saving that last 6-pack he gave me for himself. He wasn't expecting anybody to come in before it closed. And when I took it, when he like gave it to me, I could feel like a little tug, like he didn't want to let it go. And I feel like that was a good sign. I feel like that was a really good sign. And when I had the first one, it's just I can't even. I don't have any words. I don't have any words.
It's the best.
I can tell why that guy was so depressed.
If you can't find it, if you're looking for zombie dust and you can't find it, but if you're at some liquor store or like a Binny's or whatever that has other Three Floyds and they have Alpha King, that Alpha King is like a very, very good alternative to zombie dust because it's still a Three Floyds brew. It's another pale ale and it's just very good, but it's not. I mean, zombie dust is the creme de la creme.
Alpha King is good the way that lots of other beers are good, though. You know,
That's true.
Like if you had like a Sculpin, or if you had like, like there are lots of IPAs that are as good as Alpha King.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's Zombie Dust.
Yeah, that's true.
They were like, look what we can do. Watch
Truthfully,
this. Yeah, they were like, watch this shit.
Truthfully, I haven't had a bad Three Floyds beer though. Like I've had Yum Yum, Alpha King, Moloko, all like every single Three Floyds beer I've had from them is just fantastic.
That's why that's the brewery. I went there on a Monday afternoon once, the brewery in Indiana, and it was like a random Monday afternoon, like 3 p.m., and we still had to wait like a half hour to get seats.
Yeah. One of my good buddies lives in Valpo. He and his wife live out there, and sometimes me and the fiance will go visit them. And one time on the way there, we stopped and like picked up Zombie Dust. Like it was incredible that we even were able to get it in like the carry-out side of the brewery. But when I showed up to my buddy's house with it, he was like almost in tears, like that I had brought Zombie Dust over to his house. He was so happy. So yeah, it's the best. So listeners, get Zombie Dust.
the real hard-hitting question that we probably should have let off with: is it wrong to be a craft beer snob? Because I feel like I'm the only person that enjoys a good IPA among my friend group. All my friends enjoy their piss water Budweisers and Bud Lights, and I just, I like something with flavor.
It's not wrong. It's not wrong. If you still enjoy Bud Light, that's not wrong either. Drink.
I mean, it is. It absolutely is.
Drink what you're comfortable with. But craft beer is just better if it's when it's brewed in small batches and locally, stuff like that. That stuff is just better generally. It's not it's not Bud Light and Budweiser. Anything but Miller Lite really. If you like anything that isn't Miller Lite, just drink it. It's fine. Whatever. Miller Lite is the worst. That's my opinion. I think Miller Lite's the worst.
Satchel.
Is that the champagne of beers, or is that Miller Genuine Draft?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I love the champagne of beers.
My worst beer story is at school. One time, me and my friends were playing Beerio Kart, or some people call it drinking and driving, which is when you play Mario Kart and you have to chug a whole beer before you can finish your race.
And we don't advocate drinking and driving, kids.
We don't advocate real drinking and driving. This is strictly video games, okay? It's only video games. Have a DD if you need to go home later. But this game is so much fun, and I won 8 races that night, but we were using Coors Banquet, and that is the worst drunk I've ever been in my life. Like, my head was, crushing itself in because of this Coors
There's no way that's the worst. That's the worst.
No, 8 Coors Banquets chugged is just that is the worst drunk story I have of my life, and that might sound bad.
What about Captain Morgan or tequila? There's so many. There's so many choices for terrible stories.
That is the mostly. It's probably just because we weren't at a bar. We were in my apartment at school playing Mario Kart, and I drank 8 Coors Banquets and got just pretty much fucked up, and so that's pretty much why I was pretty ashamed of it. And it's just that I was my head hurt the next day. It was a rough drunk. It was rough for sure.
You're making tough sacrifices.
That's true.
You're a man's man, Adam. I have to give you that, man. You're a man's man.
I don't know if I'm not sure how I'm supposed to take that, if that's even a good thing. But
listen, you can read it into whatever you want. You're a man's man. That just about does it here on the Second City Hockey Ice Cold podcast. Your 3 favorite craft beer snobs and food savages, bringing you everything you need to know about Blackhawks hockey and beer as we take it. We'll be back after the Hawks, sort of wrap all that stuff up. Trade deadline coming up soon. Follow Satchel at Satchel Price on Twitter. Follow Adam at Adam Hess on Twitter, and follow me.
No, it's _Adam Hess.
It's underscore Adam Hess? Okay, well, listen, man, it's your name. You got to protect it. Don't let me slander you.
I wasn't sure if you said it wrong the first time, but now you definitely
I did say it wrong the first time. I'm sorry.
Underscore Adam Hess. Every version of Adam Hess was taken. I was surprised I even got underscore Adam Hess when I was changing it from Feathers in the Hat, because I don't have that website anymore. So it's when I found underscore Adam Hess, I thought, okay, that works, whatever, let's run with it.
Anyway, follow us on Twitter. Come on, Second City Hockey. Read our work. We do great stuff. This is Robert Zaglinski for Satchel Price and Adam Hess. Stay classy, Hawks fans.